I think there's been quite a few shifts in mindsets of community and sector working together. One of the biggest ones for me that actually stands out is that all of our meetings are actually held on island. So that sounds like a small thing, but that is a huge thing for us as islanders, that people travel from wherever they work or live on the mainland to come and have their meetings on our turf where we live. That is really important. And we use a lot of community places for those meetings. So we have a presence in the community. It's not kind of that thing of you rock up once every quarter and have a chat and everybody goes home. It's quite a consistent presence, and it shows community that all these guys from the mainland will come and listen and will come and be present and see where we live and all that sort of stuff. And some of those leadership table meetings have inspired service providers and government to take immediate action to improve outcomes for children and families. One example of that is we had Craig Kennedy, who's head of Children's Health Queensland, hear about child health and development concerns and the inability to access PED screening and that sort of stuff on island. And he went and made an immediate phone call before the meeting had even finished and said, I'll get you some pop-up clinics over here on the islands, which was just a huge win and an immediate win. That was a direct action from he listened, he took an action, and it happened. Another more recent example of a service provider working better, like an island way of working, was the Benevolent Society have done two things recently. They actually met one of our SMBI listeners at a community governance meeting and were so impressed with her skill set and her ability to articulate what might be needed and ways of working that they have gone through a stage to recruit her to actually be employed by them. So that's an island job that has come about through a service provider on island because they recognised some of the amazing people that we have here. And there's just lots of examples, I think, of different ways of working, and just genuinely listening is huge.
Part of this work that can be difficult for people is not seeing an immediate change. People can go back to that same mindset of, they've come in, they've said this, they're not actually doing anything. We often hear, talk fest, that type of thing. The passion project stage of it is a way of helping overcome that, for people to stay in that positive mindset. We had this initial vision of how the passion projects would form, but what I've found, which has been really pleasing to me, is that things seem to be naturally starting to evolve themselves. I'm not sure if it's because of all the communication and people hearing that there's support out there by sharing their ideas that community have. So someone might come along, have seen that voting board. It may be an idea that they've had in the back of their mind and haven't actually yet shared, yet they've seen on those boards that other people are thinking that same thing. And it's giving them the inspiration to go ahead and follow their own passions. So I've been really surprised with that we don't, as a backbone team, aren't having to really drive these projects, that they're naturally evolving themselves just through knowing that there's support, that they're not alone, that other people have the shared vision that they have for the islands.
So this initiative has opened up doors for us to work with new and different partners. That's really clear for us. And I think one of the things that it's done is that it's created some momentum in the community, and so people have looked back and said, hey, this is a really good project, and particularly other statutory and government organisations have looked back and said, hey, this is a really cohesive, well-run initiative with really good community involvement. And what that's done is it's actually given confidence to other government agencies to say, actually, hey, we would like to be involved in this space. So particularly the child, youth, health, family services, they're at the table now, and in a way that I haven't seen before. There's a level of commitment there from those organisations that we haven't really seen before. And I think one of the reasons they're there is that they see that there's actually a container forming that actually will allow them to have a significant impact. And as they're building, gives them the opportunity to build on work that is currently being done instead of starting from scratch. And I think that's a critical thing for us, is that with strong community involvement and champions and community actually driving processes means that you don't have to start from scratch every time. You've got that foundation to build on. So someone can come in and deliver a piece of work, and it might be a short piece of work or it might be a long piece of work, but the piece of work they deliver is actually scaffolded off previous work, which is really exciting for us.
We would expect that participation from government agencies would increase in the future, and one way we're achieving that is by inviting more people to the working group meetings, key stakeholders. So they might not necessarily be the same people, but if we're going to be talking about a certain topic, there may be a new employee of Children's Health Queensland or wherever it might be would be invited to that meeting because they have a really key piece of information or stake in what's being discussed. And I think this really clever thing about bringing people into for those meetings that are in a position of decision making is also their ability to share their information back to their team. So if we have someone like the Director of Child Health Queensland here, the expectation is, and what I think is actually happening, is that they will then go back to their workplaces and share what's happening over here.
There's a need to build or to scale learning infrastructure that is collaborative and joined up. So that's one point in particular that we say we're really wanting to emphasise as important, and we're going to need to look at how that is resourced. Another area for scaling is around deep impact as far as the mindsets that people bring to this work. So we're wanting to make sure that every time we bring people together, there's value in bringing people together beyond sharing information. So transformational change, some frameworks would suggest really for transformational change, it's around mindsets. So we're much more really emphasising the importance of thinking creatively, imagining a different way.
I think that ways we can continue community voices at the forefront of the work moving forward is to ensure that we don't ever lose our reach to community, to ensure that we are accountable, present and capturing those stories, because at the end of the day, I would really like to hear more positive stories.
So first sitting at the leadership meeting and telling my story from one of our SMBI families' side of things, and to now has been a total difference. Like I wasn't able, with the support of SMBI families, and then being able to tell my story and then implement things into the community for our families from my own story is where it's, hit home to me, like other people do need help and I wish other people would listen. Stakeholders, everybody. I just want them to listen and come and talk to us. Don't say what we need. Like it's hard to jump into a community and go, this is what you need, when you don't need that. You need, that support around you to be able to tell people what you want. The community and scaling up is always coming back to community and asking. Without all those community conversations, we're not going to go anywhere. So coming in with community and making them the centre point and centre focused is where we want to come from to build. So without our community having those conversations, we're not going to go anywhere. So it's I don't think we're going to find outcomes and successes straight away. It's always going to be a working chain. And with community, you don't realistically know what is going to work, what's not going to work, and we have to change with community. Community is always changing, so bringing it back to community and focusing on them. I don't think having an outcome and a bright light at the end of the tunnel is going to be our be-all and end-all.
Some of the early changes that we've seen in the community haven't come out specifically in the 0 to 8 space. They've come out across the board with communities, actually the organisations working closer together, whereas once upon a time we were all warring for the same limited funding pool, government grants. We've now started to look after each other a lot more.
The SMBI Families Initiative moving forward, in terms of scaling up, will include things like we'd like to grow our SMBI listeners to 100 people this year. And the purpose of that is to continue to be in and out of community with what we're hearing. And it's really important to capture the narrative changing. There's kind of no point doing all this work if we're not seeing a shift in the narrative. And that won't only occur through service providers and NGOs coming in to save the day. It's also about the hard work of the backbone team and the community to support moving forward and keeping momentum going so that things don't get forgotten about and people lose hope and kind of get down again.
The next steps in the project, in terms of where we're at the moment, we've got an action plan and they're built on the aspirations of community. The groups agreed to support the coming together of people to make those aspirations and reach goals. So then I guess the next steps for us are to get into action on some of those really tricky things, particularly having our government partners at the table to support the community to do that, but utilising the community insights and the community, the deep knowledge of the community to be able to understand how to progress some of those things. So I think we'll start to see tangible outcomes within the community and start to see a change of narrative as we're going along. But the other important thing for me is to be able to continue to build those networks in the community and build capability, build the capacity of a neutral organisation in the community to really be able to sustain the community engagement and community capability building work going forward. I think that they're the key things.
Something we're really conscious of is not being like a flash in the pan, a quick thing and it's kind of over. We want to be quite sustainable and we're quite conscious of the messages that we're putting out and making sure that people feel connected to it and being consistent. I think because there's been so many changes and turbulence about stuff that happens over here, as community members, we want to be quite strong in our consistent message. At the end of the day, our goal is for SMBI families to be happy, healthy and thriving. That's what we want to achieve. So I think sharing the good news stories and the passion projects and hearing things are different and people are hopeful is really positive.